This story is my personal creative writing inspired by the Shona people. I have written some parts of this story in first person, as if talking from the perspective of a Shona elder. I cannot claim that it is a direct, accurate portrait of their ways of life, nor of their spiritual and political outlook, nor do I attempt it to be so. This story, however, could potentially be a similar story of any elder from an indigenous tribe, showing their perspectives when faced with major cultural shifts. More than anything, it reflects my own perspectives and political viewpoints. I do, however, hope that it conveys something of the life and spirit of the Shona in Zimbabwe. I'm with Tom and we are in Africa. We're climbing up a steep, smooth rock face. We are looking for crystals. We don't find any, but when we get to the top of the rocks there is a village. The landscape view from the top here is beautiful and expansive. At the entrance to the village there are two people who are my guides. First of all, they say I must wash. It is a place where the water is flowing strong and splashing up high. There is a metal grid that goes over the river and the spray comes up. Others are washing here. I am at first timid as I think the water will be cold, but it is warm as shower water and delightful. There are two babies crouched by the washing area. I am meant to give something to them. I am a dreamer. I want to relate my experiences to you, mixed with poetry, mixed with dreaming, because I feel you are also a dreamer. So, although this really happened, some of it happened within the world of dreams. Setting off from Sheffield, I become overwhelmed by a sense of wonder at life in all its forms. I feel the urge to write. I see the people cleaning the trains, I see the wandering youth, I see the drained fields, the ditches, fences and the hedges. I see the soulless monobox housing sprawled over the country, the trees clambering over the embankments, the bracken and the bramble, the brick, the brash and the trash. I see the smart cards, the trades and the tricks. I see the polluted water. Through the window a power station looms. We become overshadowed by its form, its cables racing, carrying the gift of electricity across the flat barren landscape. The wires, held up by soldiers standing in service, as if frozen in motion during a march to bring the spark of magic into everyone's homes, are continuing, criss-cross cutting the horizon all the way to London. Waiting in the airport, I see the travelling people pushing around their luggage, weighing it in, getting checked in. Deja vu descends. I have been here in a dream, I know. I recognise the aisles, I recognise the blue and yellow screens. I feel the urge to write, to search for more meaning through words, to express deeper aspects of the soul. I want to express the brevity, the randomness and the chaos mixed with love. I want to express change, something which makes me make change. Flying over Ethiopia, I gazed down on the dry brown empty fields, nothing growing, no life. The only places I saw settlements was where there were a few trees on the side of a mountain. Where there are trees there is water. Water is the foundation for all life. If the rains disappear, so does life. I remember that in Shona culture there is a strong belief in asking the spirits to bring the rain. A part of me feels that perhaps the oldest songs and dances have all related to the petitioning of the gods to take mercy on the tribe so as to make life abundant in times of scarcity. Which of the gods will hear the prayers of poverty? Perhaps the rain god. the one who feels the heat cracking up the land, dried up with fire, shedding tears so that people may eat? Perhaps the sun god, who feels those dark dreary nights wet with cold, and opens his heart of fire for all to take hearth. Perhaps the earth goddess, who feels the disconnection of people who have spent too long shut up indoors, caught in a life that offers little touch of earth, and gives birth to plants, animals and people out of the dust and the dearth. Perhaps the spirit of the air, she that moves through all things, animating with soul, who feels the restless heart, the fear and worry, and breathes life back into all. Here we live with the earth under the rains. Here the earth is the colour of blood. The blood here is fertile and basks in the face of the sun, showing off her colour. Cotton wool clouds float above, mixed with azure blue horizons and crystal waters, sparkling with bright pinks. Here is a potion that could excite seeds to germinate, that could awaken the spirits. Where there's a will, there's a way. This is how we live. Our faith is what we live by. From day to day, feeling our way from moment to moment. Wandering through the rain, I find myself at a pool surrounded by birds and wildlife, which have all become disturbed by my presence, so I decide to play sit-spot with them, staying as still as I can to calm the disturbance I have created. I wait crouched on my heels for some time, by which point nature settled down, some of the birds showing signs of coming out of hiding from the bushes. I have not met anyone yet, but somehow I felt it necessary to first come here to the pool to introduce myself to the birds and wildlife. I walk back to the farm next to the lodge, and a girl walks round the corner of the farm kitchen and sees me. She tells me her name is Priscilla, and with her younger brother Blessing, she takes me to see the animals. A hilarious afternoon unfolds, as when we go to see the animals, one of her cousins comes along who brings along with her a baby sister, who is only about 2 years old, and upon seeing me, the baby bursts into tears with a look of terror on her face. All of her family fall about with laughter and try to get her to touch me and get familiar with me, which fails every time, and only just makes her cry and scream all the louder, in shock at seeing a white person for the first time. I feel my great-grandfather with me. It's a melancholic sadness for the land of England and how we have trashed the place. I feel a poem coming through me. Where have the open fields gone? Where has the wildlife gone, and the life lived under the stars in seldom visited places? The smoke from Newcastle smothering the land creates a life that I can't stand. Oh, get me out, oh, get me back to that old and long forgotten track. Where have you been? I have been looking for you. Come in and eat sadsa. My brothers and sisters, you are all welcome. Here, see the cooking fire in the centre of our home. Warm yourselves and eat food. Have a seat. We don't have cushions to offer you, but here's an old fertiliser sack which you can use. Have a cup of tea and make yourselves at home. Here is my water. I carry one of these 4 times a day, half a mile to get my water. Here I have a solar lamp. Before then, the only lighting we had was candles or oil lamps. We used to gather many herbs from the forest, but now we drink tea from the shops. Much of our traditional knowledge about plants and the way of life are being lost and forgotten. It is sad, but it also seems there is little we can do about it. The young people all want your ways, and why shouldn't we benefit from the same tools that you create for your culture? Perhaps people have got tired of the old familiar ways, or there is the idea that making more money will improve their life or make it better. It's not like a village as we know it, many houses gathered around a central square or farm, tucked in neatly together. The village is more like a collection of a dozen or so family hamlets, spread out over a whole valley section, each hamlet having a few dwellings or so, and a few fields before the next hamlet. The whole valley is referred to as the village, so it's hard to get a sense of how many people actually live here. Everyone is a grower out here, so it makes sense to have your field outside your door as close to you as possible. Water is sourced from a number of boreholes, some of which dry up in the dry season. All the women carry water on their heads every day, between 70 kilos to 100 kilos a day for their families. The experience of getting familiar with the village folk involves many excited smiles and exclamations of surprise. It's not often that a white person wanders in these parts, let alone gets involved with weeding in the fields. Little clusters of houses dotted all over the landscape in such an open way give the wanderer like me a sense of continually coming across people who are often not afraid of strangers turning up. We who are from a more stuff-orientated culture bring with us the sense of insecurity, as we have our locks and keys for protecting all our stuff. Out here everyone pretty much has the same level of stuff, so everywhere feels open and connected, one field flowing into another, paths crisscrossing the landscape. I am back home in the park. It's the solstice and I'm with my brother. We have a little bit of time to get ready for the winter solstice fire in the park. The wood is very damp, so it won't be easy getting the fire going, but thankfully someone has already had a fire going and has left it with 2 logs still glowing with embers. I meet 3 old school friends who have come to celebrate with us, and together we get the fire going. Now a big tree appears in front of us in the field. It's like a beech tree with smooth bark but with an enormous trunk. The top of the tree has been cut off. I notice that there are hollow holes through the trunk, the other side visible to me. The branches go out horizontal from the place where the tree has been cut and continue to grow upwards as if refusing to be stopped. I go up to the tree, and when I walk behind it, I discover that this tree marks the boundary to an old ancient trackway which leads past and through some old buildings. We live in the Domba area, just as our ancestors before us. We experience a dry season, a windy season and a rainy season. Although this year our rains came late, and in recent years there have been more extreme droughts in the area during the dry season. In the dry season our crop growing is limited to the banks of the river, where we can get water from the river to irrigate the corn with. Our lands are surrounded by forests and woodland, which we all share, to gather firewood, as well as hunt and catch wild foods and medicines. Tortoise, wild boar, mushrooms, medicinal herbs and such like. Very little has changed up until recently. The pace of life is steady and slow, like the growing of the old mango trees which surround our houses. The ancestors watch us and guide us from the surrounding rocky outcrops. Their presence brings blessings on our village, helping the land to remain fertile. So we do what we can. We farm what we can, when we can, where we can. We have maize, animals, fruit and vegetables in the forests, and this provides us with all we need. Part of the young men and boys' work is to herd the grazing animals across the plains and into the forests to graze. We all weed the fields with a hoe and only rest when there is no work to do, or because it is a Friday upon which we rest. Hard work keeps our way of life going. Hoeing in the fields, carrying water, weeding and planting by hand. There is a special medicine to work in this way. We can gather together in the fields and are able to say what needs to be said, to raise concerns, to clear the air of problems and issues which may have arisen in the family or community. While weeding in the fields, you keep your head down and your hands in touch with the weeds and the earth. Bending at the hips, bowing to the earth, in this relationship with the earth our minds are calmed and rested. Our bodies work in harmony and rhythm with the earth, sharing common aims with all generations, both below us and above us. The backbone of the whole way of life here is sadza. Sadza will be eaten pretty much every day, often 2 or 3 times a day. Sadza is basically a very thick maize porridge, thick enough to eat with your fingers by breaking into pieces, moulding with your hand or fingers and shaping to then use to dip in vegetables or soup or other such accompaniment to the sadza. Our farmers are being encouraged to sell their crops and buy in crops to eat, rather than grow for themselves and their families. Insects have come which eat up the maize, and the farming is becoming harder and harder. Our seeds don't germinate as well as they once did. Our children are being encouraged to leave behind the farming ways of life and to leave the country and move to the city. Growing our own food may not make us money, but it is our investment into the future, a harvest for another year. It builds community around us and keeps the community thriving. If we leave behind the traditional ways we know, the land will also suffer, because the land needs us to stay healthy, just as we need the land to stay healthy. If we use money to buy our food, we will be removed from having the control over our food supply. Still, we are slowly losing what we once had. The ways are changing. The shops here sell sweets, lollipops, sugar, crisps, cooking oil, flour, biscuits and tea, Coca-Cola and fizzy drinks, even phone credit. These are not our traditional foods, but foods from the Westerner. And it's not all bad. Western life has in some ways made things easier. Now we have torches, plastic washing bowls, washing up liquid, sharp knives, razors, mobile phones and cars. But our hands, we must work with our hands every day. Our hands hold a truth as solid as gold. We work the land with our hands, and chop our wood with our hands, and make our homes with our hands. If we lose this gold we contain in our hands, our ways could easily be forgotten. I dream. I see one of my teacher's eyes full of tears. I see another telling me to renovate, to reclaim the land and to work with the water. I see the grandfather eyes. It is a sculpture of grandfather, but it is also a living sculpture. Our old ancestral home is in a mess. It's been turned into a fake project and pretends to be connected to the traditional ways of life, but in reality it's a cover-up to make it look like they are doing something genuine. I must write about it, to tell the world the story about how we have lost our connection with our homes, and about how our traditions are dying out consequentially, and also about our good growing land, and how it has become possessed by the corporations.
Yes, nice.
In an essay titled The Shona Religion, written in the 1980s by Michael Gelfand, he writes, "Indeed, many people today still consider that the Shona have no religion at all. But anyone who studies the Shona religion sympathetically will soon discover that he is dealing with a deeply religious people, so complex and developed, in fact, is this culture that one day the Shona religion may come to be accepted as a form of monotheism." Our ways may seem very different to you, but as you shall see, our ways are not that dissimilar to your ways. We pray every day. Nowadays many people pray to Jesus, but traditionally we used to pray to our ancestors. We do have a Creator God, but we rarely pray to Him, because He is seen of us too far away and not really concerned with us. Whereas the Mandoro, the good ancestor spirits, are both in contact with the Creator God and are also concerned for us, their descendants, and so are in the best place to offer help and guidance to us. The ancestors, being closer to God, can play the role of making God more accessible to us and help us in our lives. The ancestors were once flesh, blood and body, and so it is easier for us to imagine them being concerned for human affairs and suffering. We use snuff to invite the good ancestors. See how we flick holy water over our youngborn to attract the ancestors' attention and to ask for blessings on the new souls in the tribe. We used to pass on all our knowledge through songs and stories. This is how the children learnt, but now we have been finding ways to write down our language and so pass on knowledge in ways other than song or story, like printed books. At the ceremonies, grandfather becomes possessed. His soul merges with the soul of the late good ancestor, and the late good ancestor talks through him to his people. This way we can get guidance for our lives from the good ancestor. We support grandfather in his work as a spirit medium, and we also go to church to ask for prayers from Christian God through Jesus. The last few days were mixed with much sadness on leaving. I said my goodbyes slowly, one by one, saying goodbyes to the people as well as the trees and the animals. I had made such strong connections with the place and the land that it was hard to let this go. Driving from the village, I gazed at the huge boulders that blessed the landscape with their presence and felt that they were really the ancestors that protected this place, the most ancient of all things that we can see, the most indestructible and permanent thing we have to hold on to and claim as real. Where are the hunters struggling to capture and return the spirit of this soul-sick tribe? The tribe upon whose quiet faces a haze of vacancy hangs, heads lowered into newspapers, glued to headlines, eye contact not trusted, as if the mixture of dust and water never grew a seed but remained a murky mud from which nothing sprang. The only sound, the lonely clicker-clack of the tube along the rails, and the hushed murmur of people talking on phones, interrupted occasionally by the mechanical talk-over voice, soulless and cold. Somewhere there are a few lonely hunters, struggling on, whose voices can't remain quiet. Somewhere I sense a stirring, a lonely song calling the soul home.